When I first started my business, I was hustling, creating, packing orders, and doing everything except actually understanding my finances, and it showed. For the longest time, I was running my business based on vibes and a cute spreadsheet until I checked my bank balance, and suddenly tax season came and I'm crying because I apparently owe half of my life savings. And that's not because you're doing something wrong, it's because nobody teaches us how to track our finances properly. So if you're running your business from your notes app or your brain, no judgment, I've been there, but this year we're leveling up. If you're new here, I'm Shannon and I run a product-based hair accessories business called Oso.Curly, and I love helping small business owners with the things that happen behind the scenes that nobody really talks about. So let's get into my top UK business, finance and tax tips. Stop guessing your numbers. I found out the hard way a few years ago that checking your bank balance isn't knowing your profit. Profit is what's left over after any VAT, any tax, any stock purchases, packaging, subscriptions, tools you use, and any travel, materials, stationery you need to run your business. And I found out the hard way looking into my finances and finding that after all of my expenses, I didn't even have enough money left over to pay my tax bill. One thing I really wish I knew earlier is that avoiding your finances isn't going to make everything just go away. For years, managing my finances, I was just using color-coded, cute-looking Excel spreadsheets that looked great, that I would update every single month, but they weren't accurate. I'd literally get to the end of the month and be like, where is the money that is on the spreadsheet? Because that same number is not in my bank account. And it simply was because nothing was getting tracked properly. If you're in the same position, what's going to change everything for you and did for me is using proper accounting software. I use Xero for my accounting software, and it's perfect because it's designed for small business owners and creators. And it's now my go-to place to find out what's really happening with my business. The features make your life so much easier as a business owner as it automatically pulls in your transactions from your bank. So you're not just guessing and looking back at your bank account, going through your transactions one by one and then putting them into a spreadsheet. You can track the expenses as they happen, monitor cash flow, and stay organized for VAT and making tax digital, which is going to be a lifesaver going into 2026, and I'll mention this later on in this video. Plus, it works with your accountant or bookkeeper, so everyone is on the same page. I also love how quick the invoicing is. As a business owner, you can send branded invoices and Xero will actually send reminders for you, which takes away that awkwardness of having to chase payments. We are stepping into the new year with confidence and clarity with our business finances. So as of filming this video, you can get 90% off your first 6 months using the link in the description box. Now, when starting a business, you do need to make things official with the government by actually registering your business for tax, which I know is something you've probably been avoiding, but I promise you it is not as scary as it sounds. Watching this, you're probably going to be a sole trader, so you simply just have to go onto the government website. I will even leave the link for that down below to make it easy for you. Fill out a simple form with your details, and then you'll be assigned your tax details, which you can use to then file your taxes at the end of the tax year, which is usually around the end of January. And then you may have a second payment that you have to make a few months after that too. And don't be scared, doing this doesn't mean that you'll actually have to pay tax at the end of the tax year. You only have to pay tax if you make over £1,000 in the tax year. And then if you make a loss, so you haven't made any profit at all, you won't have to pay any tax. But if you've made a profit, you will just pay a tax on the amount of profit that you made. The thing that has made tax so much easier for me, and something I had to learn the hard way, was that you should file your taxes way before the tax deadline. Now, I just assumed that you file your tax on the deadline. But the thing is, if you do that, you will find out on the deadline how much you need to pay. And if you haven't saved enough, you will now owe HMRC, and you'll have to give them like a monthly payment in order to clear that debt. So now I file my taxes as soon as the tax year is done, which is usually April to April. So once that is out the way, I will just file my taxes online, and then it will give me a figure of how much tax it thinks that I should pay. And then at least I have 6 or whatever amount of months to save that bill, so that when the end of January comes, I can just file my taxes and I have that money saved aside. If you take anything from this video, please take this as one of your go-to points. So I've been managing my taxes as a sole trader for the past 11 years now. And with all of the great digital tools, I've had no problem doing so. So if you feel like you have enough time, you have the tools and the patience to do that yourself, I would recommend that you don't really need an accountant. But once you hit the VAT threshold and things get a bit more complicated, I would recommend getting an accountant. And if you are a limited company, the tax situation is completely different. You are filing to company's house and you have different obligations, different tax deadlines. That I would recommend getting an accountant. When you're looking for an accountant, make sure they have experience and know what type of business you are, how you operate. And I find that I prefer to have an accountant that I can pay a monthly fee that will cover my tax return and any admin costs. It's really down to what works for you personally. If you haven't read the book Profit First, I highly recommend you grab a copy of this book. This book opened my eyes to how we should manage our finances as a business. If you haven't already separated your personal and business finances, that's the first thing you should do after watching this video. Open a business bank account because you do not want to get confused with what's your personal expenses and income from your business. And this book basically teaches you how to manage and separate your business finances, because you should have separate bank accounts or pots for different things like saving aside for tax, putting your profit into a different pot, an account or savings pot for paying yourself, and then you run your business on what's left over within that bank account. It's a really simple concept, but it will help to change the way you operate business and how you see your income in general. What comes in isn't just available for you to spend on whatever. This money has to be allocated to something in order for you to have a profitable business. So this is the part that a lot of business owners try to avoid, and this is pricing your products correctly to make profit. And if you are not a product business, you are a service business like a creator, that also means pricing your services correctly, because you could have so many jobs or you could be selling so many products but not making a profit. For example, as a creator, we still have expenses. We have subscriptions, we have the cost of equipment, cameras, ring lights, things that we need to keep up with on a monthly or yearly basis. And if you are underpricing yourself, you won't have enough money to do that. The same with products. If you are not incorporating the price for cost of materials, shipping costs, overheads, tools, subscriptions, you are not going to make a profit after actually selling that product. And this is why you shouldn't just copy other businesses' prices or other creators' prices. It really does have to cater to you personally. All right, so now let's talk about VAT, because this is the part that made my head hurt, and I know probably makes a lot of business owners' heads hurt. So VAT only becomes a thing when your business turns over £90,000 in the tax year. And I know a lot of people, including myself, is like, okay, that's really far away, I don't have to worry about it. But do not do that, because when you grow, and we will grow, VAT will hit fast, and you don't want to be that person who has to raise your prices last minute just to be able to cover your VAT. Incorporate that 20% VAT from now, and then you won't have any problems later down the road. Once you register for VAT, you basically become like a tax collector for HMRC ahead of time. You can charge VAT on your sales, on your services. You keep that money aside and you hand it over in a VAT return. The good part is you also get to claim VAT costs back on things you buy for your business. And remember, everything has to be stored and filed now digitally. So tools like Xero is going to really help you with the VAT side of things. Now let's talk about MTD, which is Making Tax Digital. So from 2026, if you are a sole trader making over £50,000 per year, HMRC now only wants digital records and submissions for your tax. No more manual spreadsheets or paper filings. Everything has to be submitted digitally with an MTD approved software. Also, there are different deadlines, so you will have to actually submit things, I think it's quarterly, but within your accounting software, it will tell you when your file deadlines are. That's why it's super important to transfer to a digital accounting software from now. If you're not making over £50,000 per year, in 2027, if you're making £30,000 per year, then you will now have to do the whole Making Tax Digital service. Pay yourself properly. Okay, this one is a big one and something that I didn't really, if I'm being honest, I'm kind of embarrassed to say it, but I haven't actually paid myself properly until this year. That's because I've always had like a part-time job job or a full-time job alongside running these side hustles and businesses. I usually just invest back into the business and hardly really pay myself like a real salary. However, I want to say to you guys, no matter how small you are, I still think it's super important to get into the habit of paying yourself. If you keep mixing things up and dipping in and out of your business account, you will never get to the point where you know if you're actually profitable to be able to pay yourself a salary. Paying yourself doesn't mean that you have to pay like a huge salary. It can be whatever you want it to be. You could start as small as £50 a month just to get into the habit of doing it. But once I set a schedule for myself at the end of the month, I'm going to pay myself this amount every single month. It makes it worth it because you're actually getting something out of the hard work you're putting into your business. So I know the finance side and the tax side of running a business can feel heavy and confusing, but honestly, once you get into the habit and the hang of it, it becomes one of the most empowering parts of being a business owner. You can stop guessing, you can stop stressing, and you can actually get a hold on everything that's going on. And trust me, I've had years of struggling. I actually had 3 years of being in a lot of business debt. I finally just stopped guessing. I stopped putting it aside and I got a grip onto things. I fully understand my finances. I use an accounting tool and I make sure I'm saving aside for future bills and future things that may pop up and get me into debt. So I hope this video gave you some clarity, feeling confident about your business finances and tax. If you have any questions, drop them down below. And of course, if you're finally ready to start using accounting software, make sure you take advantage of the 90% off your first 6 months using Xero. Make sure you like this video and subscribe for more business content, and I'll see you in the next one.